Ever just get like lost in a TikTok hole, scrolling and scrolling. And it's like you're craving connection, right? Like maybe technology has the answer to feeling less alone.
Yeah, totally.
But what if that search for connection, what if it becomes a little too easy?
I see where you're going with this.
So today we're going to dive into something, well, kind of fascinating and a little tough to talk about. Addiction to video call girls.
Yeah.
And just to be clear, right out the gate, we're not here to judge anyone. We're here to really try to understand, like, the why, the how this struggle happens.
Yeah.
Because it's often a hidden one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what makes this so important to talk about is this type of interaction. It's becoming more and more accessible. I mean, it's everywhere. And we're only starting to grasp what it means for people, psychologically, socially, all of it. It's a lot.
It really is.
Yeah.
So let's unpack that. Let's get into the science of what this addiction cycle really looks like. Because, it's pretty complex. Like, it's not just about the content itself.
Right, exactly.
So the stuff we read for this deep dive, the research, it did a really good job of laying it all out. Like, it highlighted how, like a lot of addictions, right, it often kind of starts innocently. Like, you're looking for a mood boost, just a quick hit, like we've all been there with social media, right?
Yeah.
5 minutes turns into an hour and you're like, where'd the time go?
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's that dopamine loop, Your brain gets hooked on that quick reward. But with these video call services, they offer this whole other level of personalized attention. And sometimes it's, tailored to very specific desires. So that reward, it gets amplified, becomes a bigger thing.
Totally. And that's where things get a little heavier, right? The article, it cited a study, and it's found that over 60% of people who use these services, they reported feeling more anxious.
Wow.
Yeah, anxious about like keeping up a certain persona or meeting these unrealistic expectations. And that's just one example of the impact this can have on mental health.
It's huge. And, think about it this way. If someone's mainly looking for validation, connection through a screen, then real-life relationships with all their, messiness and challenges.
And real life is messy.
Exactly. Real life can suddenly feel like really boring, really blah in comparison. And that's a slippery slope, right? Because genuine connection, it doesn't always give you that instant high, that instant gratification. So you pull back even more and you rely even more on the very thing that's causing the problem in the first place. It's a vicious cycle.
It's like that saying, comparison is the thief of joy, but like technology just puts it on steroids.
Totally.
And then on top of all the emotional stuff, the article also talked about the financial strain, which, let's be real, that's a big part of a lot of addictive behaviors.
Oh, absolutely. It's not just an emotional cost. It's a financial one, too.
For sure.
Especially with these services that offer the personalized attention, Things can get out of hand really fast. We're talking about people draining their bank accounts, going into serious debt, even doing things they wouldn't normally do just to keep funding this need. It's a real tangible consequence.
Absolutely. And what about, we've talked about the individual, but what about relationships? Like, how does this impact partners, significant others?
That's where it gets really tough. There was this one study, and it found that partners of people who are struggling with this kind of addiction, they often feel just as betrayed as if it was, a physical infidelity.
Yeah.
Because that sense of intimacy, it's been violated. There are lies, secrets, all the same things you see with physical cheating. And that makes it so much harder to rebuild trust, intimacy, to come back from.
It really drives home the point that this isn't just some isolated thing. It ripples out.
It affects everything.
Yeah. And it's a powerful reminder that wanting connection, which is totally normal, totally human.
Right.
It can become really destructive if it's channeled in the wrong way, But the article, and this is important, it doesn't end on a totally bleak note. It talks about recovery, about how it is possible.
It is.
Therapy came up a lot.
Yeah.
Like, what is it about therapy that can actually help in these specific situations?
So cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT.
CBT, okay.
Yeah, CBT. It's often really effective. Imagine rewiring how you think. You learn to recognize those triggers, the things that lead you down that addictive path.
Like those late nights alone, scrolling.
Exactly. It could be anything. But once you recognize those triggers, you can start to develop healthier ways to respond. And that's what therapy gives you, those tools to manage impulses, to find different ways to feel connected, to feel fulfilled. It's about finding that sense of fulfillment in a healthier way.
So it's not just about cutting something out. It's about understanding why and then finding a new way to cope.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense. Are there other resources other than therapy that can help?
Oh, tons. Support groups are huge. Online, in person, it doesn't matter. Just being around other people who get it, who've been there, it reminds you you're not alone. And they share really practical strategies for building healthier habits.
So you can still have technology in your life, but it's about
boundaries. It's about having a good relationship with it.
That's huge. I mean, tech isn't going anywhere. Nope. It's learning how to navigate it. That's the key. And, doing this deep dive, it's really highlighted for me how technology, it's a double-edged sword.
Sure.
It's like, on the one hand, it's right there. It's this easy solution for loneliness, instant connection, right at your fingertips. But then on the other hand,
there's always another hand.
Always. The reality is way more complicated, as we've seen.
Right. It's like we've explored the downsides, the risks.
The dark side.
Exactly. But that should get us all thinking. How do we use tech for good, for real connection? How do we make sure it's supporting us, not becoming a crutch? How do we build genuine intimacy, which, it's messy, it's work, but it's so much more rewarding in the end. Something to think about.
It really is. It's that balance,
It's
right?
finding that balance.
Well said.